Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We're in Rifle, Colorado, and we're with Lauren Boebert, and she is the proud owner of Shooter's Grill right here. And so Lauren, let's go back a ways. Let's see where it all started from. So are you from here?
So I was born in Orlando, Florida, and that's where all of my mom's family is. And from a very young age, I was just taught that there is no limit on possibility. I was told by my grandfather that I could be anything that I wanted to, anything that I put my hand to could be successful. And so that's something that I grew up just knowing in my heart that it was possible. But some of that kind of got ripped away from us when we moved to a rough area in Denver, Colorado. We lived in just a very bad part of town, and my mom had fallen prey to the lies that the Democrat politicians had told her. They told her that you needed government to be successful and that you couldn't take care of your family outside of that government assistance. And so because she believed those lies that she was told, it did limit us. And that limitation caused us to be very poor. But she thought that that was the only way that she could feed her 5 children and house us and give us the proper health care that we needed. But as a teenager, when we moved to the western slope of Colorado and I got my first job at the Rifle McDonald's, it was the best thing that could have ever happened to us. I can still remember bringing my mom home that first paycheck, and there was such a sense of pride and empowerment that was attached to it. And I learned from a very young age that I could do a better job taking care of us than the government ever did. And those promises that I was taught at 3 and 4 years old kind of started coming back to me, that I don't have to put limitations on my life.
Well, let's look at, take the government out of it for a minute, and then just look at what kind of, your upbringing is definitely a product of where you are now, how you feel, and what you, but it stemmed from your parents. What was the shift for you that made it, I mean, what kind of teenager were you?
I think I was a regular teenager, except I wanted to work. I wanted to be independent. I wanted that personal responsibility. So that was something that I worked very hard at. At 14 years old, I got my first job, and I didn't stop working ever. And so that was something that always drove me. I saw such value in that. I can remember being saved at 3 years old. And it's kind of an interesting story. At 3 years old, I remember the day I was in church, and Sister Charlotte, she had a mustache. She told me to ask Jesus to come into my heart. And I just remember thinking, he's got to be so bored in there. It's not a very big place to live. And so I always had that, just knowing that I loved Jesus and maybe someday I was going to go to heaven if I did everything just right. But then when I started to have my children and I started bringing them to church, there was life attached to that and purpose attached to that wasn't there before.
Now, your children, how many children do you have?
I have 4 boys.
Wow.
Yes, my oldest is 15, and then they're 12, 10, and 7.
So you have your hands full.
Yes.
And then, but I could just feel like what you're instilling in those boys are so important for the future, and what you're doing now, it's amazing probably what they're experiencing through their mom right now, and their dad,
yes.
and as a family.
Yes, absolutely. And Jason and I have determined from the beginning that we were going to raise our boys to be men, to be strong leaders. And we didn't want them to have those limitations that were placed on us growing up. And we have learned to develop conservative and Christian values throughout the years. And that's something that we are instilling in our boys. We know that their success isn't going to come from government handouts or entitlement or safe spaces, but it's going to come from hard work, faith, determination, and these conservative values that we're instilling in them.
So when did the entrepreneurial spirit come up in you? As far as, did it come at a young age? Were you doing things when you were young that were being able to produce things on your own, or work? The work ethic of that is, seems like pretty scarce these days, but I'm probably wrong, but
From my first day working, I loved it, and I developed a very strong work ethic, and I always wanted to produce more than was expected of me. And if there was any time that I wanted to gain a promotion or some sort of leadership role, I would kind of assume those duties without the title. And it always worked out to my benefit because they would see me doing these things that leadership should be doing, and then they would elevate me to that. But then that would just always cause me to look to the next place. My husband and I, always, one of our favorite pastimes is sitting around, talking, and coming up with ideas on how to make our community better. And in that, there's usually business attached to it. When we opened Shooter's Grill in Rifle, Colorado in 2013, that wasn't us just sitting around saying, hey, how do we get rich? Because there were many other things that we could have done that could have been more lucrative. Right. We wanted to influence our community and make a difference. And so we felt that that would be the best way to connect with people, to serve people. We wanted to really produce that servant's heart, not only in ourselves, but in others. And so we try our best to train up our staff to have that servant's heart and serve our community. It's always been more of an outreach than a business.
I mean, let's talk about Shooters for a minute. I mean, you've gotten a lot of PR over the years, and because these beautiful women and that are you know, serving you are
they're armed.
They're armed.
Yes.
Okay. So I mean, that's gotten a lot of PR, but I seem to feel like there's a little bit more to that than just that statement. That's one thing, but there has to be something more. What is that?
When we opened Shooter's Grill, we were just a Western-themed restaurant with a spinoff of Rifle, Colorado, and we wanted to serve our community with excellence. That's why we opened. But shortly after we opened, there was a man who was physically beat to death behind our restaurant. And so when I found out the next day, you know, it really prompted the question in me, how will you defend your people? And so I went across the street to the Tradesman gun store, and I asked the owner, I said, what are Colorado gun laws? I need to know. I need a way to protect everyone. And I learned of the Colorado open carry laws, and so I took advantage of that. And then soon after that, my waitresses began to carry, and of course, the next thing you know, Nightline 2020 was in our restaurant, calling Shooter's Grill the safest restaurant in America.
Yeah,
Yes.
And I think, you know, it's the safest in America. That's pretty cool.
That's what Nightline called us. Imagine that.
So did business pick up after that? Was that a huge
Yes,
deal?
we were already very successful. I did commit this business to God and to His plan, and I stood on the scripture that says, commit your plans to the Lord and it will succeed. And so that's exactly what I did. And we were already making waves just because of our great food and our great service. And a local news reporter came in to do a story because we had just won a bunch of awards and no one knew who we were. And so she came in to do a story on our food, and she saw my gun and she said, oh, that's cute, you wear fake guns here. I said, no ma'am, they're not fake. And they're loaded too.
They are?
Yes, absolutely. I believe it's more dangerous to carry an unloaded firearm than a loaded firearm.
That's true, because it's like carrying a BB gun and aiming it on somebody, and nobody knows it's not real. Huh, I never, okay.
Yes, but she quickly changed the tone of her story from our food to our our guns. And so that story went viral, and that's where we started to get all this attention. But we take it very seriously. My waitresses are trained. We've had tactical training, weapon retention training. They know how to keep their firearm in their possession, and if worst case scenario, they lose possession of their firearm, they know how to get it back. And so we take that very seriously. I believe that accidents happen because of ignorance and carelessness. Either you don't know what you're doing with a firearm, or you think you know so much that you don't have to follow the basic rules. And so we want to make sure that our staff are equipped with the knowledge to safely carry. And we've done a fantastic job with that. And with Shooter's Grill, it's not only given us a platform and an advocacy for the Second Amendment, which I believe defends all of our constitutional rights, but it's given us an advocacy for freedom. And I feel every time I step in the doors of Shooter's Grill that I just stepped into America. And this is everything that our country stands for. And I've studied the Constitution and our founding fathers, and I've seen our country through their eyes and the vision that they had for our country. And I want to walk worthy of that. I want to walk worthy of what Jesus died and bled and died for. And I want to walk worthy of what our founding fathers put their lives on the line for, to create our great country and our constitutional republic. I want to be everything that they hoped that we would be.
Do you think that motivation and that it stems from being an entrepreneur or being a hard worker, or like for me, you owning a business and working that business, which restaurant business is definitely not an easy business. It's 24/7. Mm-hmm. Does that have a big role in how things are for you and your family and that whole upbringing?
I believe so. I'm the oldest of 5 children, and so I've always felt a sense of purpose in my life to make a difference. And even with my brothers, I treated them more like they were my children than they were my brothers. And so I've always just had this sense of responsibility that my actions will influence those who are watching me. And now, of course, I have my 4 children who I look to in the same manner. And I want them to have something to look up to and know that their life matters and what they do, their actions matter. So it's really just a combination of so many things. A combination of being taught just as a young child that nothing's impossible. And then being in a position where things were limited and seeing how I can cause that to have those chains broken off. I can break those chains and make waves and really pioneer the way for others to follow. And of course, my love for God just, it does make everything possible. And I see in His Word what He's called me and all of us to do. And I say, if you've called me to do that, if you've justified me to do it and qualified me, then who am I to say that I can't? And so I'm going to do everything that I can to push forward and really walk worthy of those causes. And I hope that I influence some people on the way. Certainly, I haven't attained to walking in perfection, but I sure do strive for it. And we make mistakes along the way. At times, I've even failed my way to success. But I believe that those failures, those mistakes, they cause growth in character.
Growth in character, absolutely, mm-hmm. Absolutely. How did you, this might be regressing a little bit, but how did you pick Rifle? How did you guys land here and then, start businesses? And
So from Denver, we moved to Rifle, Colorado, because my stepdad was tiling in Aspen. And so this was a place where really we can afford to live. The economy was all right when we moved here. Mm-hmm. And so we got a home and started just to develop our roots here. And like I said, I got my first job at the Rifle McDonald's, and that was just amazing. I worked at several businesses in Rifle, and I loved the mom and pop feel. Even the McDonald's had that. Right. And there was just such a sense of community. It wasn't corporate or this union feel. It was just a home feeling, like you were part of a family. And I think that is really what caused me to go the direction towards owning a restaurant. Mm-hmm. I loved the atmosphere.
Sense of community and that community coming in.
Absolutely, and that team building. Everything matters, from the front of the house to the back of the house to your vendors that come in on a daily basis. And those relationships are built and strengthened. And it's just something that I've always loved. I love the hustle of the restaurant business. I do really well under pressure. So on those slow days, it's kind of depressing. It's like, oh, what else can we possibly do?
Well, you're not slow anymore, though.
No, not at all. But that pressure, it really motivates me to get things done. And so I love rush hours. I love it when we're hollering at each other, to get moving and get things done. I love it when it's loud and there's dishes clanging and people in and out. And it's just so exciting and lively for me.
So you must have been going crazy on these times right now.
Oh my goodness. So during the shutdown, it was very depressing. I took that time to really hone in on personal phone calls for my campaign. So it wasn't completely unproductive, but it was a very idle time, and I can see how for so many that depression can just set in. And I was just seeing how to overcome this and seeing the way out, and that was really keeping me from falling in that state of depression. But it wasn't easy. And of course, I still had my 4 boys that I was helping homeschool now because they weren't going to school. So we were definitely still busy. But there were days, where I would go in my closet and say, well, gosh, what am I going to wear to the couch today? And I think that that's something that a lot of these bureaucrats and elected officials missed. Not only were they still collecting a paycheck during this shutdown, but they still got to wake up with purpose. And they would get to go to work or in some way fulfill their job duties and have that sense of accomplishment at the end of the day. And there were so many of us who didn't have that anymore.
Yeah. And that's why I feel like it's great for me to meet you and know that you are on that grassroots level of being able to build something. And I think that's good because you understand more people at our level,
Absolutely.
and then you can represent that way. So let's go into that a little bit. So what was the turning point for you to get involved in politics?
Well, never underestimate the power of grassroots, for sure. I mean, we the people are strong, and when we get our mind set to something, there's nothing that we can't accomplish. So with Shooter's Grill, I've had the platform of the Second Amendment and freedom and the Constitution, and I've even traveled to other states helping to motivate them to not lose those constitutional rights and not let people just trample all over it. Don't tread on me means so much more than just don't take my guns away.
Right.
Don't tread on my way of life. Don't tread on my values, on my beliefs. And, so this is something that I've been advocating for 7 years. Well, when Democrats took over the state house, the state capitol there in Denver, we were in for a rude awakening, and we saw one of the most horrific legislative sessions that I've ever witnessed here in Colorado, from red flag laws to comprehensive sex ed to national popular vote compact, and so many more. And when Governor Jared Polis signed the National Popular Vote Compact and stole our votes to elect the President of the United States, I said, we can't allow this to happen. So I was very busy with my restaurant at that time. I was restructuring. I was working at least 120 hours a week. I mean, that was my average then. I would go home and get 4 hours of sleep maybe, and I would be right back in here. But I saw that this was happening, and so I went out and I began to collect signatures. A lot of them I was able to collect right here at the restaurant while I was working, but I also traveled to other towns. And out of the 229,000 signatures that were gathered, I was the second largest signature gatherer in the state of Colorado. And now for the first time since 1932, because of a grassroots, citizen-led effort, we have the opportunity to repeal this garbage legislation. And National Popular Vote is on the ballot, and we can repeal that this November. Not only did I see our electoral college votes in danger here with this, I saw our Colorado resources tightly connected to that. I know that California wants all of our resources. And if we lose our electoral college votes, I believe that no presidential candidate will ever come to Colorado to campaign again. They'll go straight to California and promise them everything that we have. And Colorado will dry up and we will lose everything that is precious to us. So there was certainly a drive that came from this grassroots effort, and we were going down to the state capitol talking about these unconstitutional red flag laws. And of course, last fall, former presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke came to Aurora, Colorado, and this was after he announced from the debate stage, hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15s and your AK-47s. And when I heard that, I said, wow, we know that they want to take our guns. We've been saying this for years. All of their legislation that inches away at taking away our constitutional rights to keep and bear arms, we know that has an end goal of ultimately stripping us of that right. Well, he was the first Democratic candidate to actually say the words, "We're taking your guns." And so it wasn't enough for me to sit at home and complain about him. So when I learned that he was coming to Aurora, Colorado, I drove to his presidential rally. I drove 3 hours away with my Glock on my hip, and I looked him in the eye, and I told him, hell no, you're not. You are not stripping us of our right to defend our lives. We have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I have the right to defend my life. And so, of course, that made national waves. And
No, I just want to know, what was the look on his face?
Well, there was definitely a look. You know, I actually had more fun with the audience than I did with him. There were some hecklers all around me. I mean, I was in a sea of people who did not agree with me.
Right.
I definitely walked into the lion's den there. And so I had more fun with the people around me than I did with him, and that back and forth with them. And one man, he told me, he's like, you don't need an AR-15. And I said, well, I don't have my AR-15 today. I have my Glock. And he's like, well, you don't need that either. And I said, well, don't worry, sir. I got your back. But there was actually a rally in Grand Junction, Colorado that was inspired by that day and the words that were said that day. And they called it the Hell No Rally. And they featured me as a guest speaker. Well, I had already been looking into our representatives' voting record, and I didn't like it. I was trying to see what was going on in the western slope of Colorado. Why are we beginning to look so purple? We should be leading in conservative values here. And so I started looking at a lot of our elected representatives who weren't involved in the national popular vote and saving our electoral college and so many other issues that they weren't giving voice to. And he happened to be there that day. And he stood up and he just gave a very generic Fox News update of what was going on with impeachment and all of this, you know. I was expecting a little more in-depth from our representative of what's really happening in DC. Well, he stood up and he said, I'm on a committee where Maxine Waters is the chair and AOC is on this committee and Rashida Tlaib. He said, you know, this is the world we live in now, and they direct the ship.
Wow.
And that's it.
Wow.
And I wanted to stand up and shout, Congressman, you've been there 10 years. Why aren't you directing the ship? I don't care if you're in the minority. When you're in the minority, we need to hear from you more than ever. You need to be communicating with the people, motivating us to get involved. I've never heard Jim Jordan stand up and say, I'm one of 435, there's nothing I can do. These people direct the ship, and we just have to get used to it. I saw that he had lost his fight for us. And I knew that it was time a fighter stood up.
Right.
With a strong message for the people. And I'd been on the ground in these grassroots efforts.
Yep.
I was hearing the words of the people, the voices of the people, and I could see that they weren't being represented in DC.
Right.
So I stepped into this role. I entered into this bid for Congress because I saw that we weren't being represented effectively. And that's what I want to do. I want to give voice to our values and the issues that matter most to us, and bring true representation from the western slope of Colorado to Washington, D.C. I believe that if we are silent, we will lose by default. And that's not a path that I'm willing to take.
Right, right. Yeah, well, you're definitely heading that path, and very proud of you.
Thank you.
And for being, I feel good that we're neighbors in a way, and that you've come from the grassroots up. I think that's very important for people to know, that you fought for what you have. You continue to thrive your business even when times are tough. Those are all part of the American way, I feel.
Yes.
And then you're really leading that. Is there anything else that you'd like to say?
Well,
that
just with what you're saying, when times get tough, we have to get tougher. And I believe that us here in Colorado, we are full of grit and determination. And when those tough times come knocking at our door, that's when we just plant our feet and remain solid and steadfast. I believe that our founding fathers intended the U.S. House of Representatives to be citizen-led, not led by career politicians.
Right.
Because when people are in there for too long and they really make this their way of life and their career, they become out of touch with the people.
Absolutely.
And then that's when we see this overregulation and overtaxing and overspending, and all it does is destroy our lives. We don't want government bailouts. We're not one government bailout away from economic success. We want to be able to get back to work and live our lives without overreaching government, regulating everything that we do and overtaxing everything. We work hard for the dollars that we earn, and I think we have the right to keep most of them.
Right. I keep thinking about your 4 boys and your husband and how they're behind you, and and it's amazing to me that that family is so tight enough to, they're going to endure what you endure.
Yes.
And that's pretty tough.
Yes, you're right. They will endure everything that I'm going through. They see it all, and everywhere they go, someone has something to say, whether it's good or bad. And so they are having to develop some tough skin. because not everyone agrees with our opinions and our beliefs. And so they have to learn to articulate their arguments. And I think it's really great that they're doing that at such a young age. But I went to my husband first about this. And we decided that this is what we need to do to step up and serve our country, to secure what we believe in. Really, we're okay with laying everything that we have on the line for this, and we've counted those costs. But after I went to my husband, we went to our children, and we said, this is what we're going to do. We believe that this is right for our country. We want to secure the country, our nation, that we're going to send you out into one day, and we don't want to send you into a socialist nation. And so, of course, after that, then we went to our pastor, and we sought his guidance. And then we announced to everyone else, we're going to fight for you.
And your kids understood?
Yes.
That's great.
Yes.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with ELN and the community at large. And I'm kind of hungry. Do you have, what's up with the menu up there?
Oh gosh, let's go get a shotgun burrito.
That sounds good. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
So thanks for joining us today. We appreciate the time that the community takes for ELN and to get the word out and just to be a community member through the network. So see you again.